Thank you. Well, my name is John Coonrod. I am the chair of Sarvodia USA. It's a volunteer position, and I'm so honored to get to do that with an organization which has taught me and taught the world so much about the dignity of every human person and how that can be mobilized to solve even thorny problems like this one. So I want to welcome you. You can reach me, John at sarvodiausa.org. And with that, I want to turn it over to Dr. Vinya Ariyaratne, President of Sarvodia. Vinya.
Thank you, John, and good morning and good evening to all of you. I would like to actually make a presentation, but before that, I'll give a background. If you can enable me to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can see my screen. I'm trying to put it into full screen. Oh,
okay.
Something happened.
Yes, for some reason, we're just seeing a black screen.
Oh, you can hear me, but this is not moving. Something happened. I need to.
Yeah, do you want to email me your deck and I can share it? Sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you please do email me your deck, and I will project it for you. You can just tell me when to switch. And Vinya, I think your computer's actually frozen. I don't know if you can hear me. Oh dear. Hope we didn't lose power there. I'm going to okay. So Vinya has vanished for a moment. Well, it's a good thing we're all now 3 years super familiar with the vagaries of Zoom. Welcome, Ariadna. Welcome. If you're just joining, nothing is happening at the moment because Vinya has had technical problems on his end with his computer, and he was just about to start his presentation. So we will wait for him to reappear. Lakshaman, there hasn't been any power cut there, has there? Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm so sorry. This internet connection suddenly went off. Sorry, extremely sorry about it.
So do you want to show your slides, or do you want me to? Do you want to send them to me?
No, I think I can manage. Let me try.
Okay.
Just let me open the presentation. I should be able to. Just opening it.
Okay, we're seeing
Okay, thank you. Again, I wish to welcome all of you and really sincerely thank all of you for joining this call. Some of you have already contributed to this effort and also are very keen to know about what's happening in Sri Lanka. So there were requests from various our supporters and also caring individuals who know Sarvodaya, or some of them are new to Sarvodaya, who are concerned about the situation in Sri Lanka. So that's why we organized these two events today and on Thursday. So I will very briefly summarize the situation. We are in a deep crisis. It's the worst crisis, socio-economic crisis we have ever faced since independence. Last month, our inflation stood at 54.6 with a staggering food inflation of 80%, and they are predicting that in July it will go up to 100%. So it's a very dire situation. Already nearly 30% of our population is directly affected. 6.2 million people are food insecure as per the World Food Program latest report. So the majority of the households are adopting certain coping mechanisms, mainly based on reducing the quantities of food, that is skipping some meals, or the portions are much less. So it's having a significant impact on the most vulnerable groups, such as the children, the pregnant mothers, lactating mothers, and also the elders. So, but particularly we see the impact being disproportionately worst among people living in the estate sector, where the tea is grown, and also in the urban populations. But of course, the coping mechanism sometimes in the rural areas are relatively better, but it's still now, of course, they are also having serious difficulties of accessing food due to high prices and scarcity as well. So we expect to have, already we are seeing an impact on the children's nutrition. Those of you who are familiar with nutrition indicators, weight for height, weight for age, that is also the height for age, which reflects chronic malnutrition, is at a very high level even before the crisis started. Now these figures are deteriorating. Moderate acute malnutrition for both male and female is over 10%, and severe acute malnutrition is at the level of more than 1.5. So these are just indicators to show that there is a serious negative trend in terms of nutrition. So in as early as March 2022, Sarvodaya developed an emergency response plan as part of a much more comprehensive social protection program. We were anticipating a major food crisis, and we selected 8 out of the 25 administrative districts in Sri Lanka, which were most vulnerable, because we couldn't cover initially the entire country. So we focused on 3 interventions. Just for those of you who are not very familiar with the Sarvodaya infrastructure, Sarvodaya is an organization which has been around for 60 years. It has a very unique philosophy based on Buddhist and Gandhian thinking, and it has had a tremendous impact in terms of empowering the community and also fulfilling their basic needs over a period of more than 6 decades. And we have a presence throughout the country, a very extensive infrastructure, which is second only to the government. And we have a grassroots presence in more than 5,000 villages in Sri Lanka, although we have reached more than 15,000 villages out of a total about 40,000 villages in Sri Lanka. So it also is still a voluntary movement, largely mobilizing volunteers to do the community level activities. And even at an international level, our Sarvodaya USA is completely a voluntary body. We don't have a single paid employee. All are contributing their time and their intellect and their time, their efforts voluntarily. So Sarvodaya is very well positioned to address this crisis the same way that it had done 50 years ago, although when we had a severe food crisis in the early 1970s, but the situation today is much worse. So this program we branded as We Are One. We really wanted to have that notion of we care for each other, and there's a lot of potential between us to face this situation. So it has three very important components: a community kitchen, a food bank, and home gardening. This is going as an integrated program. So initially it is more focused on relief, but then shifting more towards sustainability by encouraging the communities to grow part of their food requirement at family level as home gardens, or in the community as community garden or community farming. So in the 8 selected districts, they started these community kitchens affiliated to preschools. We were targeting the age group 2 to 5 years children, and also pregnant mothers. And it's going on now, and we are now trying to expand to other districts as well. Then the food banks, initially we started in all 25 districts based at our district centers, where people, donors can come and deposit these dry rations, donate dry rations, and then those who are in need can come and take. So we want to popularize this so that it can be also done by other organizations, including religious institutions, community groups, and so on. Then home gardening, we have selected particular types of vegetable seeds that will be suitable to the 3 climatic zones of Sri Lanka: the dry zone, the intermediate zone, and the wet zone. And we have already initiated more than 2,000 home gardens around the country. So the progress in brief: over 12,000 children are fed daily on weekdays through preschool-based community kitchens. 500 to 1,000 persons provided weekly meals through urban community kitchens in Colombo City, which we do in partnership with other civil society groups. And as I mentioned, over 2,000 home gardens have been initiated in 11 districts, and we are expanding to other districts as well. Then over 80,000 families. This is our flagship program, supported by a corporate consortium, and I'll explain to you the program because it's a very important program. We have partnered with more than 8 corporates. These are big corporates in Sri Lanka. Dialog is a telecom company. Then Mass Holdings, which is in the garment industry. Hemas, they are into pharmaceuticals, to tourism, and it's a big conglomerate. Then the Ceylon Biscuits Limited Group, which produces biscuits and other food stuff. Then the Citibank, and Sunshine Holding. And this program is monitored by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They have the oversight, and they are also doing it on a pro bono basis. So up to now, we have been able to reach about 83,000, more than 83,000 families in all 25 districts. And we are supplying a pack of dry rations, which consists of 9 items based on the recommendations of World Food Program. And this is good enough for about 3 to 4 weeks for a family of 3 to 5 individuals. So, but this is only a temporary measure, but we want to continue for 6 months. We are raising funds for this program. Already, we are getting a lot of publicity for this program, and more than 280 million rupees have been committed, and our target is to reach 200,000 families in Sri Lanka. Then also to just touch, my background is also in public health, and so I have been involved at grassroots level health interventions, as well as national level policy level work, and also joint planning with the Ministry of Health to address the health crisis, because we have a shortage of medicines, and also there is an impact on the health service delivery because of the fuel shortages and the electricity cuts that we are experiencing every day. So this program called Suodaya, or Awakening of Health, is to build health resilience at community level. Actually, this program started when we had the COVID pandemic, and now we are forming these committees at village level to be able to cope with the emerging pressures on the health system, where we focus on prevention of diseases, particularly non-communicable and communicable diseases. And we also, through some of the donations which are coming specifically for medical relief, we are channeling them to rural hospitals which require medicines and essential supplies. We also provide emergency medical services at the protest sites as purely a humanitarian exercise. And this is at the golf face site where we are stationing an ambulance, and also the Red Cross and St. John ambulance service, we are providing medical services there. Then finally, just to remind you about our support base, still the community support, cash and in kind in various forms, remain to be the mainstay of our support. But of course, we have international individual donors and well-wishers from Sri Lanka and from abroad, and we are also supported by a large number of expatriate Sri Lankans. Then we are also supported by institutional donors, charities, foundations, bilateral agencies, and UN agencies. Then corporates, including Facebook, Meta, we have been receiving support, Microsoft, HSBC Bank. So we have support, but of course, the requirement is much greater. So we have started this campaign to raise $20 million worth of assistance, both financial and supplies. And we have already probably been able to secure about $1.5 million worth of support. We have a long way to go. So this is the summary that I would like to present, and would like to spend the rest of the time discussing, answering your questions, or if you have any clarifications from our side. So I'm joined by, in addition to John representing Sarvodaya USA, my colleague Lakshman Bandaranayake, who is heading the Sarvodaya economic empowerment arm called Sarvodaya Seeds, and he's also very much a part of this national response, particularly in the food security response. He is helping me with all his technical expertise, being specialized in the field of agro technology and agro development. I'll stop here, John. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, Vinya, thank you very much. Let's first see if anybody has any questions for clarification, any specific questions you have of Vinya or his colleagues. Anyone? You can just unmute and speak up. We're a fairly small group this evening.
Maybe I'll start. Thank you, Dr. Vinya and team, for walking us through it. Obviously, it's such a massive scale human tragedy. You had mentioned when we spoke a couple of days ago that in September, the food situation is going to get a lot worse. Maybe can you elaborate a little bit on that? What's driving that, and what happened come September?
Yes. So as you know, Rajan, we have two cultivating seasons, Yala and Maha. Maha season is the larger season where the farmers start cultivating around September, and the harvest is at the beginning of the year until April. Then the Yala season starts in April, May. People start cultivating, and then we get the harvest in September. So 50% of the paddy land have not been cultivated due to lack of fertilizer in this year. So that is going to have there's going to be a shortage of rice, which is the staple food, and they can't also import because of the lack of foreign exchange. So that is the main reason that we are expecting a shortage in September for staple food, which is rice. And the substitutes are also not, you can't grow in that big quantity. That's why in our home gardening program, we are asking them to grow yams and, like manioc and things like that. But that's not going to really fulfill the requirement. Lakshman, can you add something to that?
Yes. Vinya mentioned about a drop in the last season. That is about 50 to 40%. and the ongoing season, that is which will end in July August period, we expect another 30% drop. So generally, usually Sri Lanka produces 15 months requirement of rice. Out of that, 12 months, consumption, and the 3 months is for what you call the seed paddy. Now, in the current estimates, we probably will end up uh, uh, only about 7 to 8 months rice requirement at best. So we are talking about the possible shortage of millions of tons of rice. As Vinya said, that is what the biggest fear we have. Come September, October, we might have a much worse food security or nutrition security issue. And the why we are focusing so much on food, we have about closer to 400,000 lactating and pregnant mothers in this country. And the government had a program, a protein supplement program to provide protein supplements to pregnant mothers and lactating mothers. Now, unfortunately, that has been now suspended. Similarly, some of the schools in economically challenged areas, there was government-sponsored meal program that also suspended. So these are so the growing children of pediatric age and growing children, there is food shortage. So we have huge concern. Our concern is, okay, when pregnant mothers and lactating mothers and pediatric age children and growing age children, when they do not have sufficient food and sufficient nutrition, the impact is almost irreversible. And it will have a major impact on their physical and mental cognitive development. And so the long-term implications of this food aid is very, very scary. The other point, my last point is, if you look at media, sadly, what is available information is mainly about the political situation, and also to some extent, okay, things like fuel shortage, but not much attention even the popular media, mainstream media is paying about and highlighting the serious challenges we will be facing due to food and nutrition insecurity. If you look at the government has lost its capacity to help people who are unable to meet these challenges. That capacity doesn't exist anymore. And if you look at the parliamentary discussions, they're all about, okay, who will be the next prime minister, who will be the next president, and how much attention the country's existing current leadership, political leadership is paying is insufficient, and it is almost pathetic. So people like Sarvodaya, organization like Sarvodaya, and there are many other civil society organizations and community-based organizations, they are stepping in to fill the vacuum. That has been the traditional approach from Sarvodaya, but our biggest fear is that we may not be able to support all the families which are in very, very serious, facing very serious food shortage. So at this stage, I mean, every rupee counts, every dollar counts. And we are racing against the time. Every day there are 300 births in this country, and most of these, sorry, another thing I didn't mention is the level of poverty. I think India touched on the acute and chronic malnutrition, which is now reaching 20% and which is likely to go up, and the poverty. the poverty level is presently around, is reaching again towards 20%. And the way that people are losing income and the price and the inflation earlier, Vinya mentioned, food inflation reaching to 80% and probably will reach 100% by end of next month, this month. The pauperization, people are falling through the poverty line. So what percentage of the people will eventually be officially recognized as poor people who do not have means to feed their children? Probably could be 30%, could be 40%. So these numbers are very, very scary, and the consequences, both short term and long term, are really, really worrisome. We all know that hunger is not something Sri Lankans knew about. That is not something Sri Lankan experienced for generations. The last food shortage was in 1972 to 73. But even that time, I cannot remember that we faced a severe shortage like this. So when you don't have food to feed your family, okay, people become desperate. They could resort to anything, okay, to secure food. So fear is, will we face a situation whether there will be food riots, okay, whether there will be widespread social unrest. We have already seen domestic violence and abuse of marginal communities increasing. Okay. So that is another aspect of it. Is not just okay providing sufficient food, but also to avoid widespread social unrest, which could lead to crime and other issues.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. So let me stop here.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you for that one, Rajan.
Thank you, Lakshman, for walking us through it. It's obviously very, very
Yeah.
scary.
So,
I do have a question. It's pretty general, though. Is there a connection between the civil, whatever chaos there is as a result of the government dysfunction and our capacity, Sarvodia's capacity to enact these programs? Will things be interfered with, or might money be taken, or anything, in any dimension?
No, it's a very good question, Gregory. So at the moment, it is impacting us on the logistics and operations mainly, because now in order to deliver some of these services, we need mobility. So we don't have enough diesel, even though we are considered an essential service in the list of priority essential services. We are not on the top. So they have given priority to public transport, then school transport, government workers, and then factories, production, all that. So humanitarian services, so we are struggling, and we are in fact making some appeals now through the UN for the government to consider humanitarian services as essential services. So that's our number one issue. Then secondly, now it's a very highly volatile situation where there is a whole generation of young people who are very angry with the government and with the state of affairs. And we are also having a large constituency of youth, and they are, their tension. They are also part of these protest movements. Although we can't, being a very neutral, apolitical organization, we can't support protests as such, but we can maintain our presence as a humanitarian organization providing services. So we have to also engage with those groups, as well as there are civil society groups who are much more active in the political sphere. So we need to engage as well. So I am spending quite a bit of my time in engaging at a more policy level, urging the government towards a peaceful transition of power, And also for the first time, we are also engaged in dialogue with World Bank and also IMF. And IMF also wanted the opinion of civil society. So there was a very high level discussion. The entire IMF team met with about 20 civil society leaders. We made a submission and we highlighted some of these issues related to food security and also corruption, social protection, things like that. And they took it very, very seriously. So we have that responsibility as well. And definitely we have to operate in that very highly charged, polarized environment. But so far we are managing. The main impact is on the operations due to the lack of fuel and electricity and so on. Yeah.
So I have a question, Vinya. $20 million is a big, big project, a big initiative, and you're talking with a lot of people like the donor agencies whose money has to go into a specific slot or for a specific thing. And yet we're all people with normal money that you can use for anything. What do you see as the role of, sort of our money, when people like the people on this call and every person that we can reach out to, sends $1,000 or $100 or whatever they can afford. What do you see as the critical need that that kind of untied money can go to?
Right. So $20 million target in a humanitarian crisis like this, for us, it's and for anyone, I think it's a very high target, big target to reach. But so far, as I said, we have almost reached like $2 million within a period of 3 months, right? So that means it's not an impossible task. And we are also the main national organization, the local development organization, which is partnering with the UN system. UN has an appeal for $67 million, right? So even if it is like 10% of that, it's a significant contribution. So we believe that we will also be an implementing agency for the main UN response, main national response, because of our sheer ability to reach the communities. However, we also very much with the nature, the philosophy of Sarvodaya, sharing, we would very much appreciate even the small dollar, that because it comes with a lot of heart and lot of concern, compassion, which is sometimes more important to us than having big donations. So at the same time, managing a large number of smaller donations is also a nightmare in terms of administration and so on. So to keep them informed. So to answer your question about where that support will go, definitely it will go mainly to towards food security, running community kitchen. So if it, depending on the size, we can even attribute to a particular place. This money will be used to run this preschool with 30 children in this village for a period of 3 months. Or it can be the school, a small rural school will get this morning meal, breakfast for this number of days. So we can attribute depending on that. So almost 90% will go to food security. The balance may go for, like medical supplies and other forms of support for specific groups, for example, children in institutions, elders in institutions, things like that.
Okay, well, anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, sorry to speak
go.
again.
Please do.
I've been profoundly impressed over the years, over the decades that I've been following Sarvodaya, with the community development aspect because of the long view. And what I'm hearing right now is the intensity of the immediate need. The one thing that has more, the way I interpret it, has more longer mid to longer term impact right now is the growing of the food and this kind of thing, where people are learning to do that, and you're helping give the resources to do that, and so on. I'm not sure how to formulate the question, but it has something to do with are you able to do anything during this time that also has that longer scope, or and it's completely valid. If I just want to know, is the immediate need so great that there's like no wiggle room? It has to go just for that. Is there any way to address it that's anything other than just here and now and then it's gone?
A good, excellent question, Gregory. Actually, it's the latter. We are not just focusing on the emergency response and the relief, and our normal development program is also still going on. That means we are strengthening the societies, and we see a great opportunity in this economic crisis for decentralized, devolved, a new economy to emerge. You know, shared economy concept, green economy, all that. So though in the crisis we are overwhelmed, we also see a great opportunity here for the very fundamentals of Sarvodaya to take root of decent devolved governance. So that's why we are strengthening the village level societies, and we are encouraging them to have community farms and also value addition for their products, and introducing new technology. Maybe Lakshman can add new farming techniques where you use less water, and the fertilizer. We have some products that are very exemplary in terms of improving soil fertility. So all that is also going on. Actually, I should have mentioned. So parallelly, we are looking at the long-term recovery plus building a new economy as well. Lakshman, you want to add?
Yeah, very briefly. So over a period of almost 70 years, we have been over-reliant on chemical fertilizer because of government subsidies and also water freely given to farmers. There has been excessive use of water as well as excessive use of fertilizer. Now that has completely eradicated the traditional way of farming practices. Now, even though government has lifted the ban on chemicals, the price of urea, the most important component in the nutrient system, is 10 times higher than what it used to be. And so what we have been working on the last 2-3 years, even before this crisis, how can we optimize the use of inorganic chemical fertilizer, also enhance the productivity of organic agriculture. So by introducing biologically derived products and different farmer practices, we are working with universities. We are working with some of our scientists. We have a full-fledged scientist team. So that is our long-term plan, which of course started much earlier than this crisis. But changing people's habits, not easy. Getting people to cultivate their gardens, which they have never done, it's not easy. But there will be a certain percentage of the families who will be doing that, and Sarvodaya's support to expand home gardening systems is mainly targeted towards women, because the mother is the person who is most concerned about the nutrition and food in any household. So summarize one, okay, we have a long-term plan that we will have alternative to traditional or rather conventional chemical farming. We are not saying eliminate chemicals, no, reduce the consumption of chemical because of the if you can't do that, and also providing an alternative to chemical, economical and effective alternative to chemical farming. So we think that the future farming need to be a hybrid, where you need to have certain kind of phenotype of fertilizer, but continue to increase the use of non-chemical interventions. And the second is gradually helping housewives to start their home gardens. Thank you.
And to add, Gregory, I forgot to mention that we also have a financial institution which emerged as a microfinance institution, which is now a listed company, which is the only company, finance company in Sri Lanka, which has ownership by a charity, the large ownership by a charity. And even the ownership, we have shares by both the village societies. It's a unique model. But of course, we have to operate within the central bank regulations in the traditional neoliberal model. So it has its own challenges. But we have a financial institutions largely owned by a community organization. And we are now looking at new models of entrepreneurship development linked to export so that we can bring more dollars to the country. And youth entrepreneurship, women entrepreneurship, that's also going parallelly to strengthen that long-term recovery and really rebuilding Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Okay, well,
I
wanna
had a
thank-
question.
Yeah, please go.
Sorry,
Please go,
John.
Yeah. No,
So, you mentioned that the sort of severity of what might happen post-September has not quite set in. And do you think that's also a case with international donors, and what needs to be done to sort of convince them to really start making these donations now so things are not as bad as you see them going in the next few months?
Yeah, Amruta, actually, it's very strange. We were a little bit disturbed because usually a UN appeal gets within the first 3-4 weeks, at least 25% of the target is reached. And in the case of Sri Lanka, it's not even 5%. Why? Because I think the donors don't have confidence in the governance. I mean, that's the plain truth. So we have to get our
you've frozen, Vinya. Oops,
the civil society organization and the private sector and the government, but there's a missing trust element here. So I hope today they are going to elect a new president, and if they come up with some form of a interim arrangement where there is credibility, international credibility, then I think it will be solved. So I think the main problem is that the donors don't have confidence in the governing system of Sri Lanka, whether the money will really reach the beneficiaries. So we have to definitely address that. Once that is addressed, we hope that there will be money coming in. Of course, there are other extraneous factors like the war in Ukraine, and most donors are supporting the emergency response in Ukraine and so on. But for me, they are secondary issues because there are many nations and organizations wanting to support. For example, EU has not made any significant contribution to Sri Lanka. Why? And also the European nations, because they are very concerned about human rights violations, continuing anti-democratic practices, arresting social media, activists and youth leaders, and now declaring emergency, which is the last thing that we need. The tourists can't come. Now there are travel advisories. When you have, it's like martial law, and how can you expect tourists to come, which is one of the main revenue sources for Sri Lanka. So we have to get our governance act together. Then I think we'll be able to get more support.
Very briefly, Sri Lanka never short of friends. We never short of friends. So it is so sad this time. Okay, why there is so much of enthusiasm by among the friendly countries. I believe, okay, Vinya gave a very explanation, a very reasonable explanation for that.
Thank you, Lakshman. I think this is also something that we can individually and personally impact. That, I was at the UN last week, and at USAID yesterday, and USAID is surging investments in food security to address the food price crisis, and they've made a big new commitment to nutrition security, and that they haven't figured out what to do with those commitments yet. So I know that all of us can, well, of course, I don't have any, I live in Washington, D.C. We don't get a vote in the US Congress, but everybody else in the United States can influence the United States to do what it can. Friends, I met also with the Swedish contingent and encouraged them to support. I think there's things, even letters to editors in local newspapers can cause a big surge. I've in just local grassroots support, particularly if people understand that there's, that as Vinya said, the number one source of resources to address this crisis are the community members themselves. That are, it's our privilege to stand in solidarity with them, to work in partnership with people who are working as hard as they possibly can to feed their families. And against right now, economic crisis, a huge, political crisis, and these crises are global. So the donors are also stretched. So all of us need to, can reach out to friends. You can tell everybody you know to please join the call on Thursday. I've gotten some really inspiring emails from groups of the diaspora, the Sri Lankan diaspora in the US, who are organizing events and gatherings and Zoom calls. So, this, as Vinya said, this is going to take a while. And the worst is still ahead of us in September, probably. So, we can use this opportunity to really mobilize people that we know, friends that we know, people who have been inspired by, for decades, as Gregor was saying earlier, by Sarvodaya and by its profoundly humane and sustainable strategies. So I really do encourage everyone to do everything that they can think of. And if you wake up at 2 a.m. and you think of something, please pop me an email if you need information or materials or anything else. I know Vinya is going to send a copy of his slide deck to me, and so we can share that with anybody, and we'll have the recording of this available. So Vinya, anything else or any other questions from anyone before we complete the call today?
John, thank you. I think, thank you, John, for spending your time and organizing this. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you who joined the call. And we'll keep you informed, and we need your solidarity. Collectively, we'll somehow win this over, and I'm confident that we'll somehow overcome this and build a better Sri Lanka and a better world. Thank you.
Very good. And thank you all for all that you've already contributed and will contribute. And just that Sarvodaya and the people of Sri Lanka live in your hearts. I think, as Vinya said, that makes a huge difference. So thank you all, and good night for now. And I'm sure we'll all be in communication as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.